I usually think it's a good sign when you come across a plant that's been introduced by a company, then they've named one of the varieties after a family member. In this case, with David Austin roses, this lovely variety here, which is known as Olivia Rose Austin, is a particularly good rose that has been very impressive here in our trials. As you see, this plant and the one over there, and then two other plants on the ends of these beds are part of the trial here, where we're testing out the varieties to see how they do under our conditions here in our region. That's the mid-Atlantic and northeastern states of the US. And now that we've been watching this plant for 3 to 4 years, I'm delighted to tell you that it is a very special rose, and one that you might want to think about growing in your garden. You'll see, in comparison to several of the other varieties, this is a lower, more compact growing one. It's also one of the earlier flowering ones. In fact, it's one of the earliest ones to come out here in this trial. And as you look at some of the old flower buds here, you'll see that about 2 weeks ago, these were in full glory, and now they're finished, they've dropped their petals, and it's time to get out the pruners and go through and do some deadheading to freshen it up. You'll also see that it's producing its flower buds here in strong clusters, perhaps not as plentiful as some of the other selections within the David Austin range, but they're carried and produced all over the top and sides of the plants. It is free flowering, and when they all come out, as you see, they put on a beautiful display. Now look at what's happening when you look closely at the flower buds here. You'll see that they're nice, big, fat, rich pink flower buds that then, as they begin to open, you'll see that they have this really delightful shade of rich light pink. And then as the petals unfold, you'll see that the outer petals start to fade to a very light pink, almost white. And then as the flowers gradually unfold, look, then you'll see this old-fashioned rosette type flower here, packed with lots of petals and putting on a lovely show. It's kind of a flattish rosette of flower, but very, very nice. And then, of course, when you smell it, it's got a medium, bright, kind of fruity fragrance that is very delightful too. The big thing about this variety is that it has very healthy, disease-resistant foliage. And here in our trial, as you see, we have 4 different plots. This one and the one just there, both of these are sprayed in the early part of the season with a fungicide to help ward off black spot and mildew and so on. But the 2 plants that are over in these 2 beds are left unsprayed. And that for us is the test to see if the plant will be able to survive and prosper without having any intervention of spraying and so on. And as you can see from all of these 4 plants, they're doing beautifully and putting on a very good show. And incidentally, by coincidence really, it happens to be right on the end of the beds here, and that in a way kind of shows how you could use it in your garden at home, because it's smaller and more compact and kind of spreads out rather than goes up. This is a plant that you would put at the front of a bed or a border, perhaps even just as a little low hedge, somewhere where you're going to be able to enjoy these gorgeous flowers near the front of anywhere, and then perhaps, like they are here, taller ones behind. And what's great about it too is that this is a nice hardy variety, hardy to zone 5, which means that it will grow anywhere in our mid-Atlantic and northeastern region. You'll find that it's an almost continuous flowering variety, especially if you do what I'm doing now, going through and deadheading it. That will refresh the display, get rid of any of the old flowers as they're going over, but more importantly than that, it will help to stimulate plenty of young fresh growth that's going to push up from inside the crown, like these shoots over here that, as you see, are carrying new fresh buds that are then going to carry the display through the rest of the season. Now, what's interesting about this too is that as we get into the summer months, you're probably going to see some of these flowers turn to a lighter shade of pink, almost white. And then as we get into the cooler weather of the autumn again, you're going to see this rich pink color return. So that's perfectly natural. That's just how the plant is. It's a great plant, as I mentioned, for putting at the fronts of beds and borders. This would be good to have in a nice big bold group if you have the space. And because it's a compact grower, this would be nice to put into containers too. And it's easy to grow. Really, as you see here, all you want is an average garden soil, as long as it's free draining, and that's important. It will grow in a sunny location like it is here, out in full sunlight, and it will also tolerate a little bit of shade too if it has to. But the main thing about this is to be able to enjoy these beautiful flowers that just keep coming and coming and coming. Now, what I mustn't forget to tell you is that we grew this variety along with several of the other top performers here in the nursery. We grow them in containers and we ship them out to our partnering garden centres, which are located right throughout our mid-Atlantic and northeastern region. And that's where you're going to see nice, big, strong, well-grown plants that you, when you go there, will be able to touch and smell and see and admire, and hopefully be able to find a spot for them somewhere in your garden. Named after the granddaughter of David Austin Sr., the late David Austin Sr., and of course the daughter of David Austin Jr., Olivia Rose Austin. This is really a delightful little rose that we've been very impressed with here in our trials, and one that we think you're going to enjoy growing in your garden too. This is David Wilson. Enjoy your gardening. It's good for us, and it's good for our environment as well.